Excited to have her up here in, this is our boxing ring. Later in this day we're going to have fighters in here fighting for the Golden Gloves. And to have this beautiful inside and out individual come in here and fight for our country in our boxing ring, this is fantastic. Thank you.
Inside a boxing ring. I'm so excited. This feels like being in the well of the House of Representatives. It's the center of action, and we fight just as hard down there. I'm so excited. Are you happy to be here? Yeah! There's someone walking out on the sidewalk right now, and he's holding a sign. You may have seen him. It says Tea Party, also known as the KKK. Aww. So let me see a show of hands. How many people here are part of the KKK? Oh, somebody better go tell that guy out there. He's got it wrong. Can't possibly be. You probably heard that all this week, how the Democrats were talking about the Tea Party that was in Washington, D.C. over the weekend. Over 30,000 freedom-loving Americans came to the United States Capitol on Saturday. With less than 48 hours notice, some people drove over 20 hours to be able to come out to Washington to do whatever they could to get the attention of Nancy Pelosi, of Harry Reid, of Barack Obama. They did everything they could, and they were shut out by the Democrats. And as a matter of fact, they were smeared by the Democrats this week. You may have heard that, where Democrats said that they were called the N-word, which of course would be wrong and inappropriate. But no one has any record of it. No witness saw it. It's not on camera. It's not on audio. They said that they were spat upon. No one saw it. I walked right through the gauntlet of where they were walking through. There were people for the health care bill, very few. Most were against. No one saw it. There's a $10,000 reward right now for anyone who can produce either a witness or a video or an audio. Don't you think we would have seen an audio or a video by now if there was something out there? When I was out there, no member of Congress could be out there without having a camera in their face or a tape recorder in their face. And I just think we need to call this for what it is. They want to say that you are the ones that are wrong because you don't love and appreciate the government takeover of healthcare. What do you think about that? Right. That's right. I would agree with you. And so we're going to talk about that, and I am here to tell you a little bit about where we're at right now in the country, but also to congratulate you. Congratulate you because you're saying 35 years of Jim Oberstar is enough for Northeast. I was extremely disappointed this last week. He had said that he would be a part of what was called the Stupac 12. Any of you hear about the Stupac 12? Yeah. 12 pro-life Democrats who said they would refuse to vote for the Obamacare because it is the greatest expansion of abortion in the United States since Roe versus Wade back in the early 70s. Now that is saying something. The greatest expansion of abortion since Roe versus Wade. Jim Oberstar promised that he would not vote for the bill if it contained federal funding of abortion. Well, on Sunday afternoon, the so-called pro-life Democrats caved, and Jim Oberstar caved even before the whole Stupac 12 caved. He caved early on, and he was out lobbying other pro-life Democrats on the floor. Now think of this. On Sunday, on the Sabbath, that's when Speaker Pelosi decided we had to have the vote. During Lent, on the Sabbath, pro-life Democrats were being forced to knuckle under and violate their moral conscience, but also the moral conscience of every American in the United States, because now for the first time in the history of the United States, all Americans will be forced to have to pay for federal funding of abortion. This is what Jim Oberstar voted for. Now, he's been quoted in the papers as saying, that's not true. I didn't vote for federal funding of abortion. I am here today in Duluth to tell you, yes, he did. Yes, he did. There is no such thing anymore as a pro-life Democrat. That's a myth that's out there. If there was ever a time when you would use your pro-life credentials, it would be on this vote. But when it came to the clutch, Jim Oberstar and the other so-called pro-life Democrats who aren't pro-life Democrats, when it came to the clutch, they chose Speaker Pelosi over their commitment to the pro-life movement. And you need to know that. You need to know that information going forward, because this vote changes our country forever. It changes us forever. And I want to give you just a little bit of background. First, I want to give you just a little bit of positive news. Overwhelmingly, the American people were on the side of life, and on the side of freedom, and on the side of prosperity, and on the side of growth. 60%, almost 60% of Americans. That shows we truly are a center-right country. Even if you look, here's another piece of positive news, even in the state of California, in Nancy Pelosi's own district, when they had the elections last year, when they had the elections, and they had an amendment on the ballot that called for having same-sex marriage, even in Speaker Pelosi's district, the vote totals were going, and also tax increases. There was a measure on increasing taxes in California. Even in Speaker Pelosi's district, that measure didn't go through. So what that tells you is that the American people are on the side of saying we're taxed enough already. Does anyone agree with that? Yeah. That's why things are changing. In the state of Virginia, you saw that when in 2008, with the presidential election, Barack Obama won with almost 10% of the vote in the state of Virginia. Now Bob McDonnell, a Republican, won the governorship in the state of Virginia overwhelmingly by 13 points. That's a 23-point shift in the voters. Then take a look at New Jersey. New Jersey, which is not a Republican state, New Jersey put Chris Christie, a Republican governor, in place of John Corzine. No one thought that was going to happen. And then after Christmas, after Harry Reid had a vote on health care on Christmas Eve, when Al Franken and Amy Klobuchar signed away your right to freedom and health care and voted for this job-killing government takeover of health care, along came the people of Massachusetts, and the mother of all ironies, Ted Kennedy's seat, who was the father of this government takeover of health care. What did the people of Massachusetts say? Are you kidding me? Scott Brown! We want Scott Brown! And that gave us 41 votes in the Senate for Republicans, which everyone thought health care was dead at that point, and the president wouldn't have a chance. But the one thing we've learned is that the president doesn't give up easy, and we're not going to give up easy either, are we? We aren't giving up either. Because I'm here to tell you that when the bill passed around the midnight hour on Sunday evening, I turned to our leader on the floor and I said, this is it. We have to repeal this bill, and we have to file a discharge petition on the floor, which requires 218 signatures, because we have to get rid of this bill. And he said, go for it. And so the very next morning, I was the first one on the floor of the House of Representatives, and I dropped a bill to repeal Obamacare. The very first bill introduced on Monday was my bill to repeal Obamacare. as your candidate to run against Jim Oberstar this fall, if your candidate runs on repealing Obamacare, your candidate will win this fall. I have no doubt. Because people in Duluth are no different than people anywhere else in the United States. They want the American dream, don't you? You want the American dream for your kids. You want your children to have a better way of life than you had, right?
Right.
You have today a better way of life than your parents, don't you?
Yeah.
Your parents sacrificed for you. They did whatever they could so that you could go to school, so you could go to college if you wanted to, so that you could own a car, you could own a house. They did whatever they could. And we want that for our kids too. But now we're looking at a future that is so different. It will be unlike anything that we knew, that our grandparents knew, that our parents knew. And I want to give you just a little bit of background, but it doesn't have to be that way. Let me give you the positive first. We don't even have to wait 1 quarter for job growth. We can have job growth next quarter, and this is how we can do it. Do you know President Obama increased spending last year in the United States when the economy was tanking? He increased the federal spending 64%. This is unbelievable. In 1 year's time, the $700 billion bank bailout, the $1 trillion stimulus spending, he increased some of the budgets in Washington, D.C. by over 80% in some of these departments. That's unbelievable. And it's so irresponsible, you can't do that. Well, what we would do is cut out all of the increases that President Obama has put in place in spending. It's like he's a kid in a candy store right now. What does he care? It's your money. What does he care? He's sticking the bill to you. He's sticking to the bill to your kids. Is that what you want? No. We can't afford this guy. So we cut back on that spending. Do you know that the United States has the highest corporate tax rate in the world? The highest business tax rate in the world? The highest job creation tax rate in the world? There's a reason why we aren't seeing job growth in the United States. It's because we have a 34% tax rate. And then you join that with a high job creation rate that we have here in the state of Minnesota. Well, no wonder somebody's not going to come here to Minnesota to start jobs. If you have to spend over 40% just on a straight job creation tax, let alone your property tax and other taxes, are you going to come here to Minnesota to open your new business? No, you're not going to do it. So what we should do is take that job creation tax, the corporate tax, take it from 34%, cut it down to 9%. Be about the lowest in the industrialized world and say, hey, open for business, come here. Bring your new businesses to Duluth. We've got smart people, come here. You've got smart people, you've got beauty, you've got hardworking people. Who wouldn't want to come to Duluth? It's a beautiful place. Let's make it the go-to spot. Duluth, Minnesota. This area, the Iron Range, this was the center for building the American dream. And what was that? The basic building block of this country came out of this area. Iron ore, which fueled U.S. Steel, which fueled not only the dramatic growth in this nation, but also the world. We were the steel hub in the world, and it came out of here in Duluth, Minnesota. And also lumber, timber. We were a huge supplier of lumber and timber out of this part of the United States. But what's happened? The EPA has come along and has pinned back our opportunities for logging, for lumber, for timber exploration, also for iron ore, for mining. It is not, mining is not evil. These are resources that have been used for good here in the United States and across the world. Is there any more renewable resource than lumber, than trees? I do think that they put seeds in the ground and regrow again. Isn't that what your understanding is? This is a reproducible asset. And yet, we've been prohibited from using these natural resources in this area. And so that's what we need to do. We need to cut taxes on that. We also need to get rid of the death tax. which is the most immoral tax of all. You've already paid taxes throughout your lifetime. Why in the world should Uncle Sam be able to reach in after death and pour taxes out, full taxes out yet one more time? Upwards of 50% tax rate at the time of death? I think that's an immoral tax. Same thing with investments. President Obama is looking at a huge increase. If you take your money and you put it at risk to start jobs, that's called a capital gains tax. And then the money that you make on that, he wants to jump that money up for taxes. Well, if we zero that out for the next 5 years, that investment tax, do you know what that would do to the investment community? If we have a 9% business tax, a 0 death tax, and a 0 tax on investment in new jobs, don't you think maybe that would produce something in this country? That'd be a wonderful start for us. And what the economists tell us is it would be next quarter. So instead of Harry Reid saying in February, isn't it great? We only lost 36,000 jobs this month. Is that great to lose another 36,000 jobs? I think what will be great is in November when Harry Reid loses his job. And Barack Obama have a jobs bill for us. The only problem is there'll be no jobs. You're getting the bill. That's what they call a jobs bill. So we can do that on the jobs front. We can grow the economy. It is not that tough to figure it out. We have done it before. We did it under Democrat presidents with John Kennedy. He said we had to cut these business taxes. We would grow. He successfully cut the business taxes. We saw growth under John Kennedy. We saw it under Ronald Reagan. Same thing. He said, let's cut the taxes on those who create the jobs. We'll see the economy grow. And we did. Showing it doesn't matter if it's Democrat or if it's a Republican president. What matters is what's the formula? What's the principle? Are you following a pro-growth principle? Or are you putting into place a pro-government growth principle? That's what we've seen under President Obama. A pro-government growth principle, which has meant a decline in the private sector. And we're going to see that in just a minute with some information I want to share with you on the jobs bill. So we can do that in jobs, but we could also have positives in the healthcare industry. This is over 2,400 pages long, and that's the least of our problems on this healthcare bill. It's actually tens of thousands of pages that are yet to be written by the bureaucracy. They are the ones that will write this new bill, and I will tell you this, the bureaucracy always wins. They make sure that they get the jobs, not you. And if you need to know it, there's an article that came out in the last 2 weeks in USA Today, and they showed that federal employees are making double what those of us in the private sector are making. Did you know that? Their wage and benefit package is double what someone in the private sector is making. 1 out of 5 federal employees today makes over $100,000 a year. Our taxes are going to feather the nests of a lot of bureaucrats and a lot of government. Is that what we want going forward? No. We want a strong private sector. Where's Jim Oberstar been on this all along? Jim Oberstar has been on the side of big government and big government growth. As a matter of fact, he has a bill right now that he's pushing in Washington, D.C. on the Navigable Waters Act, which would give government the right to control even a puddle in your backyard. I kind of think government has enough power and enough control. I don't want them controlling any puddles in my backyard. How about you? What do you think? I think it is time to go. So let me tell you just a few things that are in this new health care bill. There's well over 110 new commissions, new bureaucracies that are created by this health care bill, and that is just the beginning. So here's your doctor. You've got to go through now these 110 or more new commissions and new bureaucracies before you can ever get to health care. That makes going to the Department of Motor Vehicles look like a walk in the park in the future. You are talking hassle with a capital H. As a matter of fact, Do you know who is going to enforce this new healthcare system? The IRS. That's right. You've been hearing, you've been listening, and you figured it out. It's the Internal Revenue Service. Now they're your friends, aren't they? That's who you want breathing down your neck. Well, I've got materials that I hope all of you have picked up. The IRS is now charged with every month, not once a year, every month, breathing down your neck to verify that you have purchased acceptable to government health care. They don't care if it's acceptable to you. This health care has to be acceptable to government. Not only that, they can pour through the books of your employer, and they will, because the IRS will be there to check your employer every month to make sure that your employer is providing health insurance acceptable to government. They don't care if the employer wants it. They don't care if the employee wants it. It's what's acceptable to government. Now think of how dramatic that input is going to be. The IRS every month in your life, and if in the opinion of an IRS agent you don't have the right health insurance, they have the power to issue a fine of $3,000 per employee to the private business. What kind of incentive do you think that private business will have to hold on to providing health insurance for you? They don't have to, you know. They can pay a fine. They can pay a $2,000 fine, and then they're done with you, and you're gone. And a study was conducted before the vote that said 114 million employees are going to be dumped off of their current health insurance plans and out into the private market or these exchange, because employers are going to say, I don't want to get caught in the crosshairs. Does this sound like a likely scenario? I think it will be. Do you remember President Obama said, if you like your health insurance, you can keep it. Who remembers that? Yes. I think I believe that promise as much as the one where he said all the negotiations will be on C-SPAN. Remember that? Yes. Every negotiation was held behind closed doors. Not 1 minute was held on camera. Oh, there was a 7-hour infomercial where the president spent more time talking than every Republican put together, but none of that resulted in any of the health care bill. 100% of the bill was written by Democrats, between Democrats, and it was voted on 100% by Democrats. This is a Democrat bill. They produced it. They own it. They made ridiculous promises they will never be able to keep, and they've already broken them. How do I know? We found out the day after the bill was signed that all members of Congress and our staffs, we lost our health insurance in this bill. Now, my health insurance is the same as any other federal employee, and it should be. It shouldn't be any different. There's a myth that says members of Congress have a better plan than other federal employees. It isn't. It's the same. But we found out that we and our staffs lost our health insurance, so we have to go into the government exchange to get our insurance. The only problem is the exchanges won't be created for another 3 years. So we're still, this is how messed up this is. We don't even know if our own staff and our own offices today even have health insurance. We can't even get an answer to that question. And we work in this bureaucracy known as the government. Can you imagine what it's going to be like for you to try and get an answer as to your health insurance going forward? This is the kind of mess we're just starting to see. We knew during this whole discussion, President Obama's chief economic advisor, Christina Romer, said, if this bill passes, we're looking at 5.5 million jobs lost. Lost. 5.5 million. Why would anyone in their right mind vote for a bill that would bring about 5.5 million jobs lost? Well, this morning when I was leaving the Twin Cities to come up here, this was in the paper. And it was in the St. Paul Pioneer Press. You can find this. It is in the business section. Firms total up costs of health care changes. And by the way, we knew this before the bill was going to pass. Here's 3M. Good Minnesota company, 3M. 3M company joined the ranks of big companies, putting a price tag on the health care overhaul on Friday. saying they expect an $85 to $90 million charge in the current quarter. That's this year, right now. In just the first 3 months of this year, this health care bill is going to cost 3M $85 to $90 million. What does that mean? That means either they have to raise the costs, or they have to raise prices, or they have to cut back on something, don't they? So what does that usually translate into? Jobs lost. 5.5 million jobs, according to President Obama. We're seeing it right here in our own backyard. As a matter of fact, what they're going to do, they have to make decisions on changes to their health care offerings to their current employees and retirees. Well, I thought President Obama said, if you like your health care, you can keep it. Oh, Joe Wilson's here. Good, that's right. My good friend Joe. I think we didn't get the truth. I don't think we got the skinny on what was going to happen. We know it already. In fact, they're not the only ones. Let me read you a little bit more that's in this article. This is just today. AT&T, $1 billion. This is going to cost AT&T. By the way, they are the largest employer of union employees in the country. This will be 1/3 of their profit will go just for this one benefit that they will have to account for. $1 billion. So take that. That'll mean many, many fewer jobs for them. AT&T is considering cutting benefits it offers to current and retired workers. Don't think these implications haven't already started. Caterpillar Company announced over $100 million this first quarter it's going to cost them. John Deere. Caterpillar and John Deere are the 2 largest manufacturers of heavy equipment in the United States. Over $100 million charge also for John Deere Corporation. Valero Energy announced a similar accounting change, saying the healthcare law will raise their expenses. $1 billion. Let's see. 3M employs 75,000 people. AT&T, the largest private. Okay. Healthcare costs may shave as much as $14 billion out of United States companies this year. $14 billion. I am here to tell you that translates into jobs. That's what Jim Oberstar's vote gave us. That's how serious this is. We're looking at huge increases in taxes. Time Magazine, not exactly Fox News. Time Magazine is a liberal weekly newspaper. They put out in their paper, their news magazine 2 weeks ago, that the spending levels are so great that President Obama has put into place that we're looking at doubling our taxes within 10 years. Who here can afford doubling your taxes? I can't afford doubling my taxes. This is before the health care bill came into place. The doubling of taxes. I wonder if you have you gotten the handouts that I brought along? No. Okay, let's make sure somebody hands out those handouts, because I want to go over some of them. Let me give you just some more information. Caterpillar, I told you about $100 million. This is out of the state of Indiana. The government is taking over student loans. They're looking at dropping 400 people in Indiana from the student loan industry. Massachusetts, the Democrat governor said with their medical device company, gee, I think we've got some medical device companies in Minnesota, don't we? The Bay State medical device companies are looking at this new federal health care law could force their plans and thousands of jobs out of the United States. It rattled their Democrat governor. Maybe it would have been a good idea if they would have let us read the bill before we vote on it. That's the new way in D.C. Don't put the language on the table until a couple hours before. We don't want anyone to read these bills. I think it'd be a good idea. Medtronic announced that they could be losing 1,000 jobs in Minnesota. These are high-paying jobs. Boston Scientific is another medical device manufacturer. It's a 3.8% tax on medical devices. New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, thousands of jobs in all of these states. Well, let me tell you what has happened in the last 18 months. in the last 18 months, and this began under a Republican president, I voted against it. The $700 billion bailout. How many of you remember that? $700 billion bailout. How many were in favor of the $700 billion bailout? No. Not me. I voted a big negatory on that bill because I knew you can't give a blank check to a Treasury Secretary and think that somehow this money's going to be spent wisely. Hey, I clip coupons when I go to Cub. I don't think our Treasury Secretary is clipping any coupons these days. I don't think so, especially our current Treasury Secretary, who's the head of the IRS, who, by the way, forgot to pay $35,000 in taxes, even though his employer told him he should and gave him the check to pay. He forgot to do it. Guess what? When they found out that he had a liability, he didn't pay any taxes. He didn't pay any interest. He didn't pay any penalties. He didn't go to jail. I think I want the Tim Geithner ticket out of jail that he got, don't you? I want that same ticket when they come after you, when they come after me. Enough with the special perks for these guys. So in the last 18 months, unfortunately, under a Republican president, we saw the $700 billion bailout. But guess who embraced that $700 billion bailout? Guess who thought it was a good idea? In the very first presidential debate, Barack Obama. He said he was all for that $700 billion bailout. When he became president, what's the first thing he did? Now we've got to have $1 trillion stimulus spending bill. We got to have it. If we don't get it, gee, unemployment could go to 8%. Imagine that. It could go to 8% if we don't get $1 trillion worth of spending. Where's unemployment today? 10%. About 10%. Gee, I guess that didn't work out for us. His promises aren't working real well so far. I think he's kind of batting about zero about now on his promises. So he put in the $700 billion bailout, the $1 trillion stimulus, and then he said he had no part of earmarks. How many earmarks were in his budget? 9,000 earmarks. But we aren't going to talk about those, he said. That bill he signed behind closed doors. He's got a little bit of a credibility problem. But this is what I want you to know. 18 months ago, before the inception of Bailout Nation, the $700 billion bailout, 100% of the private economy was private. It was private. That's America. We have a private economy. We don't have an economy controlled by government. But let me tell you briefly what's happened in the last 18 months. When President Bush signed the bill for the $700 billion bailout, that's when the United States government started buying big banks. Bank of America, Citibank, big banks. That money was also used to start the automobile task force. So we decided we're going to buy GM. We're going to buy Chrysler. That was President Obama who wanted to do that. Because he said if we don't buy them, they're going to go bankrupt. Guess what? In about 3 weeks they went bankrupt when we bought them. So now we own these 2 bankrupt car companies. We own bankrupt banks. And we own AIG, the largest insurance company in the United States, which is a rat hole of money that we have poured down, about $185 billion, and there is no end in sight. So we own the largest car companies, the largest banks, the largest insurance company. We also bought Freddie and Fannie. Now those aren't your crazy aunt and uncle that are up or locked in a basement. Freddie and Fannie is the largest secondary mortgage companies in the United States. They're also big rat hole failures. We own those. Do you know what that means? The United States government now owns over half of all home mortgages in the United States. We own half of all the home mortgages. Also now, with the signing of this bill on Tuesday, we own the entire student loan industry. Used to be private. Today it's all been nationalized. So you want a student loan? You go crawling to the federal government. And it won't be cheap, by the way. If your son or daughter takes out a loan to go to college and you're charged, let's say, 6.8% interest, the difference goes to Uncle Sam to pay for the health care bill. That's why they nationalized the student loan industry. They wanted more money. They need more revenue to pay for health care. So they just, with a stroke of a pen, took away this private sector business. They took away from the shareholders that own Chrysler and GM. They said, sorry, Charlie, you're out of luck. Now we, the government, own the business. Not you, we own it. They did that with Freddie and Fannie. Sorry, you suckers that own Freddie and Fannie. Now we own it. Outright power grab. Same with healthcare. This is another 18% of the private economy. Today, 18 months after the inception of Bailout Nation, in September of 2008, as we stand here today in Duluth, Minnesota, our federal government owns or controls 51% of the private economy. This is stunning. This is stunning. Where is the American dream? Where is the American dream when the federal government owns or controls over half of the private economy? Where do we go? Where do we go for the private economy? This is what Jim Oberstar has been backing. You haven't seen one speech on the floor from Jim Oberstar against this. You haven't seen him once say anything against owning these car companies, against the federal government owning the insurance companies, against the federal government owning your home loan, against the federal government owning your health care. Where have you seen these speeches from Jim Oberstar? Well, of course you wouldn't. He lives in Washington, D.C. He doesn't live here in the district, but he hasn't been here fighting for you. What do you think? Is it time? Do you want somebody who's finally going to represent you in Washington, D.C.? Do you think it's time? Yeah. I think it's time. And now we've got our chance. Now we've got our chance. Now we're going to turn it around. There is so much more that I want to tell you about the debt, and you have got to hear more about the debt. It is like nothing you have ever seen. Okay, have you passed these little sheets of paper out yet? Somebody get these sheets of paper if you haven't seen it. I want to point this out to you. These years go from Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, George Bush, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush. We actually had a surplus when Republicans controlled the Congress and Bill Clinton was in the White House. We actually had a period where we had surpluses. That actually worked pretty well. Then we had 9/11 occur and we were in trouble. This is George Bush's worst year. He had about he had a little over $450 million in debt. Well, do you know what we heard all from President Obama, then candidate Obama, what a big spender George Bush was. And I thought so too. I was just embarrassed at the spending of George W. Bush. Embarrassed. But now remember, Speaker Pelosi and Harry Reid, they controlled the purse strings for 2 years in the United States Congress. Democrats controlled the Congress. And George Bush should have vetoed those bills. He didn't veto them, he signed them. So we were at $459 billion in deficit. Do you know what Barack Obama was in deficit just last month? Now remember, the worst year ever in history of a debt of the United States government was $459 billion in the whole year. Last month, Barack Obama had us in debt $220.9 billion. Almost $229 billion in overspending for 1 month. It's so bad that if you took all of the debt from the very first day that George Washington became president, you add all the debt accumulated through John Adams, Madison, Buchanan, Pierce, Tyler, all the ones we haven't heard of, Lincoln, go all the way forward to the last day that George W. Bush was in office, that big spender George Bush. You take all of the debt every president accumulated, add it all together, and it is less than the debt that Barack Obama accumulated in his first year in office. That's how bad it is, my dear beloved friends here in Duluth. That's the level of reading that we're talking about. So when you feel your pulse rate racing, and you're thinking something's not right in America, I don't know what it is, but there's something not right, that's it. The spending is out of control, and you've just heard it. It was $1.4 trillion last year, more money spent than what was taken in. This year's worse. This year's 1.6 trillion. This is like something we have never heard of before. We're looking within 5 years, doubling the whole national debt within 5 years, tripling it within 10 years. How are our kids ever going to have a chance to get ahead? How will they ever have a chance to get ahead? Because take a look at Social Security. This is the first year that Social Security is spending more money than what it's taking in. It is in bankruptcy this year. Medicare is in bankruptcy, in flat, dead broke in 2017. That's before the president signed the health care bill on Tuesday. This brand new entitlement. What did he say 3 days before the bill was passed? He said, well, now he wants amnesty for illegal aliens. He wants amnesty for illegals. So it won't be 32 million more that we're insuring. He's going to take a magic wand, he's going to wave it, throw pixie dust in the air, and legalize 20 million more people. It will be 52 million more people that are on the welfare rolls, not 32 million more people. Who's going to pay it? All of us, that's who. Because taxes are going to go through the roof. Our insurance premiums will go through the roof, and yes, it's through Medicare cuts. Before this passed, it was over $500 billion in Medicare cuts. Senior citizens have followed this issue more than anyone. Senior citizens are very smart, and they have been absolutely opposed to Obamacare going forward because senior citizens are the ones whose lives literally are on the line with Obamacare. Because if you have over $500 billion in new taxes, and senior citizens have the bulk of the wealth in the United States. So you have 500, and they should, they've worked their whole life for it, 500 billion in new taxes, huge increases in health insurance premiums, over 500 billion in cuts to Medicare, no new doctors, by the way, 32 million more people in the system, but according to Barack Obama, it's going to be over 50 million people in the system. What do you think is going to happen? It's called rationing. And when you ration care, that means you get less. You don't get in to see the doctor. You don't get an appointment. You don't get a surgery. You don't. That's the death panels. And of course, the Democrats go crazy when you talk about death panels. But when you have a senior citizen who's told, no, you can't have an MRI. No, you can't have a CT scan. No, you're not getting a hip replacement. No, you're not getting the bypass. What is that? What is that? When you're told no. America is not a country of no and of endings. We have always been a country of renewal and beginnings and innovation and finding the new mousetrap. A 3M company that figures out Post-it notes. You've got company after company in Minnesota that has given us a wonderful quality of life. You have this wonderful part of the nation that birthed the great industrial expansion because we in the United States have been creative. We've known how to take a little and make great deals out of very little because we had freedom. We had opportunities. We had hope. We were able to hold on to our resources, marshal them, figure out ways to save money, and create better. That's what we are. That's why we have always been the leader in the world. Financially, militarily, we have always been the force for good. Just like Haiti. When Haiti saw its recent problems, who was the first on the scene? United States. Down in Chile, when they had their terrible, terrible earthquake, who's the first on the scene? United States. That's made possible because we've been a free market-based economy for growth, for prosperity. Profits aren't evil, profits are good. It's out of profits that you can help your fellow man. And now things have changed under Obama. And he's now out all over the United States, so happy, so full of himself, because he got this bill done. But what does it mean? It means
tax increases for you. It means healthcare premium increases for you. It means cuts in Medicare for you. So going forward, which America do we want to have? The America of the American dream? The America that values life? The America that values your liberty? The America that values your right to own and preserve and protect your private property? Or is it the America where 51% and counting of the private economy is under government's thumb and control? Which one is it? I think I know. I know the one that Jim Oberstar chose. And I don't think that is the future that you want for yourself and for your kids. Because we can do so much better. We always have. You know, it was just 63 years ago. Actually, it was 67 years ago. 67 years ago on February 3rd that a historic event took place, really like none other in the United States. 67 years ago on February 3rd, it was in the midst of World War II. It was 1943. And as you know, it was a terrible time. The world didn't know what would happen with Tojo and with Hitler. And we were fighting a war like no war we had ever fought on two theaters, one in Europe, one in the Pacific. And in that battle, there was a convoy of 3 destroyers. And they were making their way across the Atlantic. And they were 100 miles west of Greenland. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning. And a Nazi submarine was in the water. The periscope broke the water and came through and got its sights on one ship. And when it got its sight on that ship, it let the torpedo fly. That night, there were over 900 young GIs on that ship. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, the torpedo hit the flank of the ship. And in a moment, hundreds of boys lost their lives. And the ship was starting to take on water, and everyone knew the ship would not survive. There were 4 chaplains on the ship that evening. One was a Catholic priest, Father Washington. One was a Jewish rabbi, his name was Rabbi Good. There were 2 Protestant ministers, a Methodist and a Dutch Reformed. They immediately went to battle stations. They found the life preservers. They got the lock, opened it up. The boys, as you can imagine, the power was knocked out immediately. The radio was knocked out immediately. Screaming, crying, panicking. People knew that their lives were in danger at that moment. And the chaplains opened up the life preservers, put them on, started handing them out to the boys until there were more boys than there were life preservers. And then a choice had to be made. And the 4 chaplains, as they handed out the life preservers, said, "Calm, courage, boys, courage, we can do this thing." And as there were more boys than life preservers, the chaplains made a decision. Wordlessly, without consulting each other, they each removed their own life preserver, and they tied it on the neck of a young GI. And the Jewish rabbi pulled off his gloves. As you can imagine, February 3rd in the North Atlantic at 1 in the morning, it was freezing. And he handed his gloves to a young GI and said, "Soldier, I don't want them, you take them." And the ship was going down. From the time that the torpedo hit until the ship was gone was 20 minutes. The chaplains held on to the railings of the ship, crying out, praying for those who had lost their lives, praying for those who were in the midst of trying to stay alive. "Courage, boys," they prayed. And the 4 chaplains put their arms around each other and continually cried out in prayer to the boys to hold on until the chaplains were no more. 10 years later, our president, Dwight Eisenhower, had a special medal cast, the only time it was ever done, in remembrance of the 4 chaplains. And what they did to provide love and courage and the fortitude that was needed for those in the midst of that panic. He provided that medal and had a ceremony. And they, in their lives, demonstrated the scripture that says, "Greater love hath no man than this, but that he lay down his life for his friend." Only 200 some boys survived that night, but to a man, they remembered the 4 chaplains. That is the legacy of America. That is the picture of who we are. That in the worst of America's hour, there is greatness. And I see that here in Duluth in your faces, that as our nation has taken a pivot like we have never seen in our history in 234 years, embracing a statism that we have never embraced before in 234 years. I see in you that greatness going forward. Don't doubt that we can't win this election. Don't indulge yourself that it's too late to turn things around. It is not. We are free, and we will remain free. And I thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. Thank you. I want to encourage you, as great as these numbers are here today, we've got to duke it out, and this is the right place to talk about duking it out. We got to duke it out between now and November, and we will turn this country around in November. It's going to happen, and so get behind your candidate, whoever your candidate is. You raise money, you knock on doors, you pass out literature, you drive people to the polls, but you do it. Because if we fail to do it, history will record with the greatest astonishment that those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent it from happening. Those are the words uttered by Ronald Reagan. And in our generation, we will make sure that that does not come true. We will hold on to liberty for the next generation. So again, I thank you for allowing me to be able to be here with you today. Thank you for taking up this challenge. People want to tell you this is dyed-in-the-wool Democrat. It can never be changed. I will tell you, I grew up in a Democrat family. I worked on Jimmy Carter's campaign. I saw the light. I became a Republican. Northeastern Minnesota can do the same. We can change that. So I want to thank you. I don't know, are we doing Q&A or will this be it, or what you?
If you want to stay with us to do Q&A, we'd love to keep you.
Okay, we'll do a couple questions, I guess. We're gonna go in.
Jerry and Scott with the mic.
Oh, that's right. How do you like my teleprompter? That's right. Sarah Palin had the common man's teleprompter. But no,
Jerry and Scott are here, and they, if you want to speak up, come up to them, and then we'll do it that way. So
I'm not going to be shy.
Go ahead.
I'll get the side here. Can I hold it?
No.
Can you hear me?
Good.
My name is Becky Hall, and like Congressman Bachmann, I'm a mother of 5, and I stay engaged in this fight because of our children. And I so appreciate what she's been talking about. And as I listened to her, one word that came to my mind constantly was tyranny. I fear that our country is turning towards tyranny. One of our great founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, once said that when the people, you gotta bear with me, I'm just an average person. When the people fear their government, there is tyranny. When the government fears its people, there is liberty. And I'm here to ask you to take this town hall rally one step further and join us at the Tea Party on April 15th down at Bayfront Park, Northland, and let your voices be heard. This is an opportunity for us, we the people, to speak out and fight for freedom and take Michele Bachmann's message one step further. So I hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Remember, you can be right as rain and you can study, but unless you share what you know with other people, unless you bring more people to the polls, nothing will change in November. So we have all the power in our hands. I also want to encourage you to go to my website. I have a website, bachmann.house.gov. Go there. I've got all this information is there on my website, bachmann.house.gov. Also, I have a campaign website. MichelleBachmann.com. And by the way, you may not know this, but Speaker Pelosi has made me her top target in the United States to get rid of in this November's election. And to that end, former Governor Sarah Palin asked what she could do to help me. She is coming here to Minnesota, and you can come and see Governor Palin on April 7th, Wednesday, April 7th. I invite all of you to come down to the Twin Cities. She'll be available for a private reception and a photo, and also a dinner is going to be held. Those you all have to pay money for, but there'll be a free event, which is a rally, and we want to invite you to come down to the rally. All you have to do is go to the Minnesota GOP website, and you can get the free tickets at that website. So get a carload, get a busload, come down from Duluth. We want to energize everybody up here. Bring your friends, energize everyone, and we are here to take back Washington, D.C. That's our whole goal. Do we have another question?
Where's the location of the event?
Oh, the location of the rally will be down at the Minneapolis Convention Center, and the Hilton Hotel is where the dinner and the private reception will be. Those two cost money, and you can look into the details on that, and then the freebie is the rally. But they're both very, very close to each other, but it'll be a great night.
Yeah, most of you know me. I'm Durbin Keeney. I work with veterans, right? I've dedicated my life to work with veterans, and I just a few blocks from here, we're building veterans housing. As a disabled veteran, do you remember when our president gave us $250 to make up for the fact that there was no increase in our veterans benefits this year? Yeah. Remember that? Yeah. Do you know it cost me $87 more than he gave me in my taxes? Was that a benefit to veterans? Or is this just another way of placating us so we will go away when it comes time to vote? Well, veterans aren't going away.
That's right. Let's give a round of applause to all of our veterans that are here. First of all, veterans, would you raise your hand? Any veteran that's here, raise your hand. Who are here among us. There's a disabled veterans rest camp down in Washington County, Minnesota, and a unit of government was trying to shut it down. When I was in the state senate, myself and my state rep, we were able to save that rest camp for disabled veterans. So thank you for our gentleman who is speaking.
Hi there, I'm Eric Klang, Congressman Bachmann, and I have a question concerning Congressman Oberstar has been saying that that you have to live under the same healthcare system that we all will. Is that true, or is it only for certain members of Congress?
It's only for certain members of Congress. Vice President Biden doesn't have to live in this. President Obama is exempted from this, and their staffs are exempted. The people that wrote the bill are exempted from being under this. Nancy Pelosi's staff is exempted from this. Harry Reid's staff is exempted. All the committee people are exempted. And again, I don't think, my opinion has been, hey, if it's not good enough for members of Congress, it shouldn't be forced on the American people. So I have no problem with members of Congress being treated the same way as the general public. All I'm saying is that all of us, President Obama made a promise that people were going to be able to keep their health insurance if they like it. And I'm just telling you, it won't even be a year and you won't recognize the healthcare system. Even in the year, the number of people that are going to be thrown off of their healthcare. And it will first happen with retirees. Because of these numbers that I gave you this morning, $1 billion, AT&T, 85 million, 3M. These are big corporations, and what you're going to see is they will lose their prescription drug benefit right now. They can't, these companies can't afford it. What'll happen? All these people get thrown onto Medicare. What do we know about Medicare? Dead broke by 2017. All that'll happen is that Medicare being dead broke will speed up even faster, and then the benefits will be cut. Just for sake of time, I have a whole list here that I'll put up on my website. Go to bachmann.house.gov and michellebachmann.com. And I will put the list of, it's the timeline of when all these cuts come into place. But this year, Medicare cuts start now. So there's already cuts that are coming. So we're not getting any more, we're getting less. This is what the system is going to give you. You're going to pay more and you're going to get less. What a deal. Change and hope you can believe in.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Congressman.
Thank you.
Bachmann.
Thank you.
Michelle, thank you so much for coming.
I should be about 3 feet higher. I kind of swallowed behind here, sorry.
Hi, my name is Leslie Peterson, and I have a question. I know you've read the whole health care bill. Is it a possibility that we could have a couple copies up here so we could read it too?
Oh, sure. You can get it online. It's available online, but that's one thing that we could do is we could make some copies available for you. By the way, on Sunday, they had all these souvenir copies sitting out in Speaker Pelosi's lobby. Mm-hmm. So all these Democrats were there all high-fiving each other, picking up their and the bill was like this thick. It's like this thick, so they're all high-fiving each other. They're all signing each other's copy. And I turned to one of the Republicans and on the floor and I said, that isn't the health care bill. Those are the Democrats' walking papers. That's what it is. Because they are going to lose control of the United States Congress because we are free people in this country. We're free people and we're not going to be so willing to give up our freedom.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The president said to that one representative, we don't need props for the pile of this thing, remember?
That's right. The president said, that was to Representative Eric Cantor, he said, what is that, props? It was the health care bill. Well, now we're looking at the health care bill. And if those Democrats didn't read the bill before they voted on it, and not one of them did, not one of the U.S. senators did. I will tell you, there is no way that Al Franken and Amy Klobuchar read that health care bill. They are just as responsible as any of these House guys because they voted for this bill. You need to remind them of their vote because they're taking something away from you. They're taking away your private property rights because of how dramatically our taxes will have to increase. Do you know that they're already talking in Washington about putting into place a European-style value-added tax? That's at every stage of production of anything in the United States. They add another layer of taxes. So if there's 15 processes in the item, 15 new taxes get added on. Well, if you have that level of taxes, you have that level of stagnation in the economy as well. So what the economists are telling us is that, you know, Greece, the country of Greece, has been in terrible financial state, and the rest of the European Union is having to bail out Greece. The United States, under current projections, will be in no better condition than Greece within less than 10 years. And that's before the health care bill was passed. So we desperately need to get our financial house in order. That's why this is all we've got. We have to take over control of the House of Representatives and the Senate this fall, at least one chamber, so we can put the brakes on socialism. That's what this is. I mean, what else do you call it? We have to be willing to call this what it is. When the federal government owns or controls 51% of the private economy in 18 months, well, you can't sugarcoat this anymore. Now we have to put the brakes on socialism, and we must make sure that President Obama is a one-term president. Yeah. And on the Republican side, there is no time and no patience for panty-waist Republicans either. No panty-waist Republicans. No wussy Republicans. We need Republicans with a spine who will tell it like it is and who will fight for you and not fight for themselves to keep their job. People will say to me, Michelle, thank you for being strong. Thank you for fighting. And you know what I tell people? All I'm doing is my job. This is what we're supposed to do when we're in the Congress. Because you know what my allegiance was to the Constitution of the United States. That's what I took a pledge to defend, protect, and uphold the Constitution of the United States. And that's what we need this fall. constitutional conservatives to control the House, control the Senate, and that's the first way of getting our country back on track and rejoining the American dream.
I'm Jerry Cartersnack, the business owner from Duluth here. One other sad thing happened. It's not as sad as that story you told us about the ship sinking, but around that time was the last time that a Republican was a representative here. Blotnick won the election 1946 to 48, right in there. So my idea of hope and change is I hope we can change Jim Oberstar out and we can turn that
You can do
into
it.
an honor.
You can do it.
I'd like to introduce you to 3 of our candidates that are seeking Jim's seat. If they want to just come on up here and meet Michele, and then you can meet them as well.
I would love to.
And they are working very, very hard for the endorsement. If you look around, there's people who have signs, and they're working hard to get this endorsement. And they're going to take that seat. And then you're going to have a call.
Wow, that will be so exciting. We're excited. I'm Michele Bachmann, and this is Chip Crevette. This is Chip Crevette, and hopefully you'll have a lot of interaction now so you can learn who they are, where they stand for, what their platform is. Our next candidate is?
I'm Justin Eichhorn. Nice to meet you.
Justin Eichhorn. Justin Eichhorn. And our next candidate, Rob Farnsworth. Rob Farnsworth. Thank you for running. It is a lot of work to run for office. You have to raise a lot of money. You have to go to a lot of events. You have to shake a lot of hands. It is not easy to do. And so I am really hoping and encouraging all of you, make sure that when you leave that you consider yourself a part of the campaign team up here. Not that you're just going to vote, but that you're willing to commit to do a phone bank, drop literature, whatever it takes to help organize on these campaigns. That's how we win. And we are enough. If just the people in Mr. D's bar today are all that shows up, this is enough to run an effective campaign, and it will be a hoot and a holler. You will make history here in northeastern Minnesota, so be a part of these campaigns. Thank you. And don't forget too, with this health care bill, that all businesses will be looking at an 8% payroll tax. That's before you pay taxes. And that's just the teaser rate going in. So what that means, I've already had businessmen from Minnesota tell me they're going to be hiring new employees if that's the way it is. So that's why President Obama's own numbers are looking at 5.5 million jobs lost. We need to stop the hemorrhaging on this health care bill. That's why we have to send a signal to the greater community that we are going to take back these seats and turn the world around. If Scott Brown, a Republican, can win Ted Kennedy's seat in Massachusetts, one of these gentlemen can win Jim Oberstar's seat in I believe in you. I believe in you. I believe in Duluth. And this area is going to be strong and prosperous and growing. And this is going to be a mecca of job growth in the future in the United States. Just like we saw the last century, we're going to see it again in this century. Job growth and creation will begin here with all the natural resources and beautiful people of the Duluth area. So send one of these great guys to work with me in D.C. We're going to change the country.
Yeah.
Thank you.